Eala exits Aussie Open on stinging meltdown. Manila, Philippines. What seemed to be a methodical clinic and one-sided contest in Eala's debut in the Australian Open main draw turned into a stinging meltdown. Before her avid, flag-waving fans, Eala introduced herself in style with a first-set shutout only to run out of gas in a 6-0, 3-6, 2-6 collapse against Alicia Parks of the United States in round 1 of the Australian Open yesterday at Court 6 of Melbourne Park in Victoria. The 20-year-old crowd darling, enjoying a career-high WTA ranking of number 49, blanked her foe in the opener but won only 5 games the rest of the way. The experience and grit of Parks, now WTA number 99 and in her 7th Grand Slam stint, went on full display for a thrilling comeback win in 1 hour and 59 minutes. The 25-year-old Parks, co-holder of the fastest serve in history for a female player at 129 miles per hour, will next face WTA number 19 Karolina Muchova of Czechia, who scored a 6-3, 7-6, 8-6 win over WTA number 35 Jacqueline Christian of Romania. Parks' stature as a lightning-quick server came in handy when it mattered most, recovering from a scoreless start and wearing down Eala, slowly but surely, in the next 2 sets. Parks unleashed a total of 12 aces including a thunderous hammer that the Filipina bet could not return in the final game of the deciding set. The lines to the entrance, with most fans sporting Philippine flags, were long and winding hours before the match. Seats were filled to the rafters at game time and the cheers were blaring to every Eala's point in what was perceived as a home court advantage, around 4,000 miles away from Manila. But Parks was cool, calm and collected in neutralizing that, banging away 9 of her total aces in the last 2 frames to silence Eala and an entire nation behind her. Meanwhile, erratic title contender Coco Gauff and 3-time finalist Daniil Medvedev reached the second round ahead of a defiant Novak Djokovic launching his latest bid to win a record 25th Grand Slam crown. A bumper day 2 at the season-opening Grand Slam also sees 6-time major winner Iga Swiatek enter the fray. But the tournament is over for 7th seed Felix Auger-Aliassime, who retired from his opening match with cramp, while former champion Sofia Kenin crashed out. Gauff came through against Uzbekistan's Kamila Rakimova on center court 6-2, 6-3, but was less than convincing, with 7 double faults and 31 unforced errors. Eala exits Aussie Open on a stinging meltdown. The Melbourne Sun had a way of telling the truth. It hung above Rod Laver Arena like a witness that could not be cross-examined, exposing every flicker of doubt, every bead of sweat, every crack in composure. For Alex Eala, the Australian Open had begun as a promise whispered in the cool of early rounds, but it ended under that uncompromising light, in a moment that burned longer than the scoreline would ever show. At first, everything felt possible. Eala walked onto the court with the quiet intensity of someone who had learned early that greatness rarely announces itself. Her steps were measured, her eyes steady. Across the net stood not just an opponent, but expectation itself, the pressure of progress, the weight of a nation watching from thousands of miles away, the unspoken hope that this tournament might be another milestone in her ascent. Tennis, after all, is never just a sport. It is a conversation between ambition and fear, played out 1 point at a time. The opening games hinted at control. Eala's forehand sang, clean and decisive, slicing through the air with intent. Her movement was sharp, her timing crisp. Each rally felt like a sentence she was finishing on her own terms. The crowd murmured approval, sensing a contest rather than a collapse. For a while, the match lived in balance, that fragile space where belief can still outpace doubt. But tennis has a cruel way of shifting its center of gravity. It began subtly, almost politely. A double fault here. A return drifting long there. The margins narrowed, then vanished. Her opponent leaned in, sensing vulnerability the way seasoned players do, the way predators sense hesitation. The rallies grew longer, heavier. What had once been fluid became forced. Eala's shoulders tightened, her breath shortened. The sun climbed higher, and with it rose the temperature of the moment. The first crack came with a missed breakpoint. She stared at the baseline, then at her strings, as if the answer might be woven somewhere between them. It wasn't anger yet. It was confusion. the kind that unsettles rhythm and invites noise into the mind. Tennis players are taught to live in the present, but the present can become crowded when the past refuses to stay quiet. Every missed opportunity began to echo the one before it. The meltdown did not arrive all at once. It seeped in. A racket tap against the shoe. A longer pause before serve. A glance toward her box that carried more question than reassurance. The crowd, once gently supportive, fell into that particular hush reserved for moments when something fragile is breaking. It is not unkind silence, but it is unforgiving. Then came the games that unraveled too quickly. Her opponent played freer, bolder, striking with the confidence of someone who could smell the finish line. Eala, by contrast, began to fight the match rather than play it. Shots that once skimmed the lines now found the net. Defense turned desperate. The court seemed to shrink, the angles closing like doors. In one rally, she chased down a drop shot, slid, and flicked the ball back with instinct alone. It was the kind of point that might have ignited a comeback. But the reply came back harder, deeper, ending the exchange. Eala bent over, hands on knees, the effort unrewarded. Sometimes, tennis is merciless in that way. It demands everything and gives nothing in return. The scoreboard told a blunt story, but it could not capture the inner storm. This was not just about losing a match. It was about the collision of preparation and reality. About the realization that talent, discipline, and desire do not guarantee immunity from unraveling. The Australian Open had offered Eala a stage, and on that stage she had learned one of the sport's oldest lessons. Progress is not linear, and growth often arrives disguised as disappointment. As the final points slipped away, her body language changed again. The frustration softened into resignation, then into something quieter. Acceptance, perhaps. The last game ended not with drama, but with inevitability. A final rally, a ball drifting wide, and it was over. She walked to the net, shook hands, and managed a nod that carried both respect and regret. The applause that followed was warm, if tinged with sympathy. Melbourne understands effort. It understands the cost of standing alone on a court where there is no teammate to hide behind, no clock to run out, no excuses that truly satisfy. The crowd rose not for the result, but for the courage it takes to compete at this level, to expose oneself to both triumph and unraveling. In the tunnel away from the court, the noise faded. There, the match would replay itself in fragments. That double fault, that missed chance, that moment when momentum slipped through her fingers. Athletes often say the hardest opponent is the one inside their own head. On this day, that opponent had proven ruthless. And yet, meltdowns are not endpoints. They are mirrors. For Eala, this Australian Open exit would sting precisely because it mattered. Because she cared enough to feel the loss deeply. The great ones are not defined by how